Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarai. Okay, good morning, Chava. Great to see everybody. Welcome to Yosef. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. It is a privilege to jump back into our journey through Sefer Likutei Moharan with Torah and Dalet b'siyata d'shmaya. Today's shir is sponsored by Regina Devora for the yard set of her babushka Nishmas Sofa Bat Rosa and by Reb Bernard Bollag Nishmas, his father Avimari Moshe Ezrael ben Ya'akov, also by Yitzchak Gedalyah ben Ilanit for the zechus of Menashe Gavriel ben Chava and Avraham Shlomo ben Ilanit, and by Zev Klein nishmas, his parents of Bryndel Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yeshעיהו, also for shidduchim for Yehudis, Adina bas Elisheva, Rochel, Dovid ben Fayga, Kayla, Yonatan Shimon ben Adasar Renit, Netana ben Micha Machnaz, Dovid ben Yal, Noach, Avraham ben Sarizal, Zev ben Rivka Bryndel, and all the singles of Klal Yisrael. Also dedicated as a zechus for Shlomo for Chaim Yeshua ben Chaya Miriam. He should have a speedy continued refuah process, and it should be a zechus for all the names mentioned and all of Klal Yisrael. B'siyata d'shmaya. So we continue with our teaching that we have here, Torah and Dalet. And yesterday, just a quick recap, we were learning how all of the different tikkunim and all the different avodas that we had learned about with regard to finding the remazim in this world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending us to keep us awake to the real reality of Olam Haba can be accomplished in a simple person's life on account of the regular standard Seder Hayom, right? Where if a person is engaging consciously with what's actually happening as he goes through the morning, Shena, right? Waking up from having been sleeping, and then there is zechus, and then tefillin, and then limanat Torah, which we're currently doing, and then tefillah, and then maseh umatan. So then naturally throughout that process, there's already going to be an experience of Olam Haba connection, even if a person has not magnified their das, their seichel yet, to be able to really intuit and to pick up on the hints that are encoded throughout this person's life. And so that's what we had been learning from the standpoint of the symbols of all those different things. Let's just go through them very quickly again. Shena was the bechina of zikaron of Amud Aseh, because that on some level the neshama goes up to Olam Haba, wakes up, and that's when Rabbi Nachman told us we need to fortify our remembrance on a klalius level. Every morning, big hanhaga, already to be mikasher to the tzaddik right away, right, to fulfill an eitzah, right when you wake up in the morning, to remember Olam Haba, to remember our tafkid, to remember our tachlis, why it is that we awoke in this reality. We're not really of this reality, we're not from this reality. Our neshama, which is the essence of us, has nothing to do with this. This is not our natural place. We are thrust into this mitzias for a purpose, right? And a person, by waking up right away, binding their mind to that, remembering that right away, is going to enable them to extend the consciousness or sub-consciousness of Shena to be able to enable them to connect to Olam Haba. Then we have Shena. We have then tzitzis and tefillin. Tzitzis is going to be the aspect of the gvura that's necessary to then engage with trying to find the Kadosh Baruch Hu's hints, which is going to be tefillin, moichin. Torah is the aspect of his stapkus from Olam Hazeh. And then we had tefillah, which is the bechina of the hints of Haid Vahadar. And then finally, and this is what we left off with yesterday, we have Masa Umatan. Masa Umatan is the bechina of the tzedakah, that even a person who's being mistapik from Olam Hazeh needs to be mafresh from that to tzedakah. Tzedakah is the bechina of a yichud between Yesod and Malchus, thereby uniting all the 10 spheres. Like we said before, you have Chachma, the person's mind. Olam Haba is Bina, so that's Chachma and Bina. Then you have Chesed, which is, in fact, like I said yesterday, I wanted to double check it, but it is the expansion of a person's mind to be able to be Magdil. That was the lashon the Rebbe used. We know that Gadol is always associated with Chesed, right? So to be Magdil a person's mind to be able to pick up on the hints, that's Chesed. Gvura is the Tzimtzum. Here also you have Chesed before Gvura, right? Going back to what we mentioned yesterday. So there's Chesed and then Gvura. Tiferes is the Torah that we were learning about, the aspect of Histapkos. Then you have Netzach and Hoid, which are the hints. And then you have Yesod and Malchus, which is the Tzedakah being mafresh from the Histapkos of the person's own Tzidkus, right? To then take whatever they have, of whatever they have, from whatever they have, and to give it over. And the same tikkunim are being accomplished over here, right? When you have Shena, that's Chachma and Bina. You have Tefillin, is Chesed, Tzitzis, is Gvura, Torah, is Tiferes, Tefillah is Netzach and Hoid, Maseh Umatan is Yesod and Malchus. They're in uniting and manifesting the whole Kaima Shlema of the 10 spheres in a person's morning and day, right? And that's happening Memela throughout our lives, encoded in Torah and mitzvahs, and then going ahead into the Avodah of Masu Matan. So we continue from here. Let's take a look at the Yichud. Okay, it's about a little bit higher up than halfway through the paragraph on page Samach Aleph Amud Beis. And the tzaddik says like this: the Yichud shel tzaddik u'knesses Yisrael nasa al yedei masu matan. Now that we've established that masa, which we spoke about at length, is the bechina of tzaddik, of Yisod, because it carries everything. It brings all the brachas into the world. The Yisa bracha me'es havaya. We spoke about the tzaddik carrying all of the neshamas of Klal Yisrael, right? Emerge from that place of Yisod. And that's why it's called a masa. And matan is the job of malchus titein teref levesa, which is to take that and to distribute, to be mechalik all of the shefa to all aspects of reality. So that creates a yichud of Yisod and Malchus, which are themselves respectively hinted to in the words Masa Umatan. But now the Rebbe says on a little bit more of a deeper level. We learned in a previous Torah about Shvira Sakelim, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was creating the world, he created diminutive vessels that were small, that weren't powerful enough. They were overwhelmed, right, by the shefa that came into them, either because they weren't interacting as one unit, right, and so it's like a basketball team, lamashal, where every player thinks that he's the whole team, and they weren't playing as a team, they weren't playing as a unit, so it was impossible for them to be able to accomplish the mission. That's called Olam Haba, right, that's called the world of chaos. And that causes for the vessels to shatter, and for the nitzotzes, for the holy sparks that are in those vessels, to become embedded in a lower realm, in a realm of chaos, in a realm of klipa, in a realm where HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achdus is concealed. It's all a mashal, right? We're not speaking about actual vessels. It is a parable about unity and multiplicity. Unity is when the vessels that are emerging from the one all work together to reveal the one. Shvira Sakelim means, like I just mentioned, when those vessels are not working in tandem one with the other, that causes for concealment. And that's what that means. Sparks of those original primordial vessels are going to be embedded in the concealment, because our task is to reunite the system. How? By engaging with physicality in such a way where we're conscious of the nitzotzes to kedusha in every single aspect, thereby uniting all of them and finding a Kodesh Baruch Hu's presence, and that's our job here in this world. If we're zoiche, we are going to be able to find the special ring of the king, like one of the tzaddikim gave a mashal, I can't remember exactly who right now, one of the chassidim, who dropped it in the mud, and we can find it. But if we're so busy prancing around in the mud, so then chas v'shalom, that can cause the ring to get even more lost. That can cause it to even get more stuck down in the ground. But there's precious things that are buried in the ground. The crazy thing is having a baseball catch. I don't know if you're allowed to say baseball over here, baseball catch. But okay, we were having a football kick around. No, we were having a baseball catch with my son in the backyard yesterday before bedtime, enjoying the beautiful weather. And he was taking a couple of steps back, and he stepped on something that crunched. I went over to see what it was, and it was an egg. An egg buried down under the ground. So first I wasn't sure, like, if it's like some reptile egg, like a turtle egg or something. We looked it up, and apparently a fox had taken an egg. This is what foxes do. They bury a hole, and they buried down a hole, and they buried the egg in the hole, cover it over it, and they're going to come back for it. He found an egg somewhere. I don't know where a fox found an egg, but mamish, it was dug down into the ground. The chicken egg, a regular egg. And it was down there in the ground. And this is the way that it is. There's things under the ground, that are hidden. There's buried. It just happened yesterday, so it's just on my mind when I mentioned that, there are sparks of Kedusha that are buried everywhere. And it's our job to unearth them. It's our job to find them. You find them by playing baseball. Okay. You find them by living in a conscious way, remembering this, whole drama, and recognizing when we wake up in the morning, I am a spark seeker. I'm created here to find the nitzotzes to kedusha that fell down b'shah shvir sakelim. Says the Rebbe, u'shvira hu bechinas oisiyos shenishbru v'naflu l'chol davar v'davar mizah olam. The shvira is letters. And this makes very good sense from the standpoint of standard Jewish theology. It's right there in the beginning of Bereshis, where we are told that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world with speech, with words. And Mamela, again, metaphors, right? But if the experience of creation, even on this primordial level of the Olam Haba, of the world of chaos, is emerging in the aspect of speech. So then whatever happens therein is going to cause for the shattering of speech. And instead of, again, it's another mashal, instead of there being coherent words, sentences, paragraphs, a book, a series of books where you can sense the narrative, right, that goes through all of them. You can step back and see the big picture. Instead, all of life has just one letter here, one letter there. And you have to kind of piece things together. And the only way to piece them together is to live in the consciousness of realizing there's really an Olam Haba here. It looks like an Olam Haba. The emes, there's an Olam Haba. The Olam Haba is going to happen if I find it, right? If I believe in it, if I allow it to emerge. Otherwise, it'll remain an Olam Haba. So again, the Rebbe is giving us another mashal. It's just mishalim, different words to speak about this general concept, right? Where on the one hand, you can either live in a coherent universe where all the different letters that are scattered throughout your life, in Kodesh, in Chol, Ben Adam L'Makayim, Ben Adam L'Chaveiroi, Ben Adam L'Atzmai, etc. And those scattered letters can remain, I wasn't sure which side I was doing. Either they're all one, right? Okay, let's go with that one first, right? Either you can find how all of those letters are connected and you can live a unified consciousness bound up with your fundamental mission, which you began right when you woke up in the morning, because that was the existential remembrance, right? In that minute, you say, I am on a mission, and everything that I do here is part of that mission. It's like a person on a game show, let's say some kind of, triathlon, like some kind of one of these things. And there are lots of different tests for their strength. They're going to have to, climb. They're going to have to jump. They're going to have to. So all these things are not isolated. They're all part and parcel of one program. They're different parts of one contest. It happens to be that he's a super skilled athlete. So he'll show his strength this way. He'll show strength that way. But they're not, he doesn't conceive of them as separate things. They're all part of one mission. And that's the way it is with us. Again, Bein B'Kodesh, Bein B'Chol. And all of those things, Kodesh, or either both of these things, Kodesh and Chol, both contain within themselves myriad facets and aspects and levels and details, etc. Right? That's life. There's Kodesh. But from the standpoint of waking up in the morning and remembering Alma Da'aseh, it's one thing. It's mamish one thing. What's the one thing? A unified mission to piece together all the letters. Then you hear words. Then you hear a story. Then you recognize, like David HaMelech says in Tehillim, a very powerful pasuk, Le'amos ki achya. I don't want to die. I intend to live. Va'asaper maseka. On a simple level means, which is also not so simple, it's very deep, I will live in order to proclaim the works of God. I will spread the word about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I will enable people to become conscious of Hashem, to remember Hashem. I will speak with confidence and strength on the one hand, but on a deeper level it means my life will become a story of God. I won't die. And you know what will be when ki echya? Not that with my mouth I'll tell the works of Hashem. My very life will be revealed as a story that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling. In order for it to be a story that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling, I need to string together the letters and create coherent words, sentences, paragraphs, and so on. That's called bringing about an Olam Haba from within the Olam Haba. So the Rebbe says there are letters in everything. V'chein v'chol davar yesh lo isha. We know everything has its hour. Like I believe it's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, or somewhere in Mishnei Chazal. It is in Pirkei Avos, right? Perek Dalet, right? There's ein l'chol davar she'ein l'makayim, right? Ein l'chol davar, something like that, right? Everything has a shah. V'tzarich lave b'shah zula adam zeh. Says the Rebbe, therefore, the spark of kedusha in everything needs at a particular hour to come into contact with a particular person. We learned in Torah and Beis there are three realms of the universe. There is Olam, Shana, and Nefesh, right? These are three parallel realms. We have the person's own subjective consciousness, that's called Nefesh, which experiences a realm of space, that's called Olam, underneath the general intangible experience of time, that's called Shana. Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. Says the Rebbe over here, the nitzitz to Kedusha in everything, Olam, needs to come into contact with a particular person, Nefesh, at a particular time, Shana. So, when this thing has its time, and that's what he means, v'chol davar yesh lo isha, in order to complete this triad, it needs to come into contact with a particular person. V'tzarech lava b'shazu la'adam zeh, shuhu mishayrish echadam oisam hanitzoitza sheyesh b'zeh davar. That his sharish neshama has shaychus with that particular nitzitz, again, because there are letters floating around that will have nothing to do with me. They're not my letters. Right? They're not part of my story. There are 8 billion people in the world, right? So all these different people are going to have their own cluster of experiences. The experiences with someone else are not shaykh for me. Even though be'etzem, b'pnimius, it's something I mentioned before. Chanan ben Ari sings about it very beautifully. Ani hakol, ani lo klum, right? Arin sof. So on the level of Arin sof, I'm shaykh to everything. But on the level of Ezu Asher Asmech Bechelkai, I recognize, and that's really the only way to be besimcha, I've found, is not to try to inhabit everybody's story and just to sort of be okay living within my own Dalet Amas. And from there, I'll do what I can. But and as life has progressed for me, like I just on a humble, vulnerable level, like I think I started off much more revolutionary. I think, when I was a bacher and just got married, because I had more shetach, I had more space, I had more time. Now I have like 3 kids, and a wife and parnasa stuff, especially coming up now, and I don't know what I'm doing really, and moving to a new country, and like all of a sudden it's, I have to take care of my own stuff, and that's not like, so the mission's over, and it's not like, it's not a b'diavad. This is all that could ever be expected of me. More than that, because that's also on a b'diavad level. This is lechatchila what my neshama was sent to the world to do. I have to live my own story. That's ezu asher hasameach bechalka. That's also yichud kudshabrichu shchinte. When from within the lens of my own dynamic, I'm able to perceive and to glimpse and to grasp my part in the broader master plan that involves so many parts coming together. That's a yichud, right? That means through my own limited sphere, I'm able to glimpse the broader picture. But I have a limited sphere. There are nitzotzes to kedusha that are shaykh only to me, and then there are nitzotzes to kedusha that are only shaykh to others, right? And to in other that I have no connection with. But the nitzos to kedusha in this particular thing needs to approach that particular person, and then in some way this encounter, whether it's food or drink, that's the most obvious, or whether it's besamim that a person smells, or whether it is a beautiful sight that a person sees at a particular time because HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them to Rhodes for Pesach, and they happen to look at this beautiful sight in the city of Lindos up there, at the top of the island, and wow, right? Let's say. And they have hana from that. The hana that you have is on account of, or like poignant lashon, the broken letters that are in that place. The person, the human being, this is extremely deep, is a kayma shlema. If you notice the whole Torah, we've been speaking about kayma shlema, right? We were speaking about Kayla Shlema from the standpoint of the tzaddik going through the whole tikkun process, which we laid out on a more tselem-oriented level, just the archetype, like we were speaking in a more disembodied form. So the tzaddik, again, has a mind, contemplates Alma Aseh, and then he's Magdala Seichel, he has Gevura, there are Hins, Netzach and Hoid, he's a tzaddik, those are the stapkos, that's Tiferes, and then Gesoida Malchus gives Tzedakah, boom, 10 spheres, right? That's the structure. Then we spoke about the 10 spheres from the standpoint of a person's own daily morning routine, right? This is the morning routine of a Yid. Shena, Tzitzis, Tefillin, Torah, Tefillah, Maso Matan, right? That was, here, says the Rebbe, every human being is a kayma shlema, especially someone who's gone through that morning routine, like I just mentioned, of all of those different items, and then emerges into the world of maso matan / stam daily life with husbands and wives and kids and and every aspect of life, parents. They are a kayma shlema. So this is very, very important. The oisios nishbarim cannot fix themselves. Right? Like the Gemara says, Ein chavush mater atzmei b'beis hasurim. A person doesn't free themselves from prison. Those sparks are there because they were disassociated from a structure of totality. That's why they're there, right? That's called Olam Haba. Like I said before, the only reason that the Kalim broke is exactly because they didn't integrate. So how is this unintegrated spark going to be able to come back into a whole? It needs to come into contact with a Kayla Shlema, and it needs to enter into that totality. That's called the human being. Because the human being in his form, or her form, is the 10 spheres. We are the literal embodied form of this theoretical structure / lifestyle. That's our body. We have to realize we have everything in us. It's so powerful. We just don't know how to consider the body. We have no idea what the body is. So this is what it is. The body is everything. Literally, meaning, the human form literally is everything. It's mavil al-arayan. Everything that we learn about is literally encoded within us. Mi besari echse elokah. When a Tselem Elokim comes consciously into contact with one of these broken letters, the letter is nichlol in the chiyas of that Kayla Shlema, and it comes back to its rectified place in the Olam Haba. Says the Rebbe, a person gets chiyas from this particular thing, from the broken letters in that place. And those particular broken, shattered sparks, letters, become included within the person, especially when a person eats or drinks. Really hard to track exactly where the sustenance is going. It goes into the blood. The whole body gets chiyas from this. All the different cells are drawing on the nutrients that were a result of the food that a person ate. They literally become part of the person. Again, they literally become a Kayla Shlema. This brings them shlemas, which is another word for tikkun. Because tayu means that there's no shlemas. Right? Tayu means that there's fragmentation. Shlemas is the olam hatikun. Now the thing that comes into contact with the person needs to remain by that person all the while that there are still nishmas for that person to access. In other words, it needs to become whatever part of the story it needs to become. If there's a particular object or item or dynamic or place that a person needs to live, and there are nishmas there, in other words, in that element of the narrative structure of the person's general life, then it needs to be a part of the story for as long as it needs to be a part of the story. Like people are writing a TV show, right, or writing about, just a story with multiple characters and so on. They write in the longevity of a particular character who isn't the main character. They don't want to kill off the main character; that would kill the show, right? That's what they do when they want to end the series, right? So they kill off the, but they're going to write in the involvement of a particular character all the while that character is needed for the narrative. And then that character will make an entrance, and that character will make an exit, because it was a side plot, part and parcel. But if that character makes an exit before the end of that mini story, right, that's nichlol in the larger story, it didn't serve its purpose. And this is the way it is for all different elements that enter into the show, right, of what was that movie of the guy who lived in a fake world? The Truman Show, right? It's such a deep thing. We're in a Truman Show, no question about it, right? It's just very deep, There are elements, objects that need to come into our lives, and they need to remain there for as long as there are sparks that need to be integrated from the standpoint of narrative, because my life story needed to incorporate this element for a week, for 2 weeks, for a year, for 4 years I needed to live in London, and not a moment earlier, all the nishmas of my experience here. And again, this, as on many levels, I think a lot of people learn Kabbalah / Hasidus on a very abstract, metaphysical way. And so, we could speak about Aliyas Nitzitzos, it's a spiritual thing that's happening. Yes, but it is also a very practical, pragmatic thing that's happening. There were certain lessons I needed to learn here. Like, again, those lessons are the nitzotzos or the manifestation of the nitzotzos. There were people I had to meet here. There were relationship dynamics that had to play out here. There were struggles, challenges, great successes. There were emotions I had to feel here. You understand? And that's it. And once I'm finished with that, boom, you move on. How do you know? It's not that way. You don't make decisions based on how long the nitzotzos that you're coming into contact with are necessary for your story, because af echad lo yodea, we don't know these secrets. What you do, however, is make decisions using your mind, using your heart, using your spirit, using guidance of others. And then it will be nisgale lemafreya, that, I guess that was it. Like the date that I leave was the date that I was always ever going to leave. That's how we live life. That's how we live life. Says the Rebbe, that's how the nitzotzos need to remain as part of your orbit, as part of your circle, all the while that there are nitzotzos there that are elevatable into your life. Until all of those letters / nitzotzos have already been integrated, and then you've gotten what you needed to get, and you can move on. Then from Hashgacha Yisbarach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Hashgacha will have it that yotzei mirshusai la'adam acher. Then it will be passed along. Then it will go elsewhere. Because that element still had more use in it. It was of no use for you anymore, but it was of use for someone else. Person has a car for a certain period of time, and then for whatever reason, the lease is up, or they need a bigger car, whatever it is, that car that they were driving goes to someone else. That means that every object in the world is latent with oisios. Hashem's hashgacha, which is inscrutable, unfathomable, mind-blowing, I can meditate on this for a long time, is busy tracking the exact nitzotzos in every single thing and orchestrating that the particular nitzotzos in this particular bottle of water will be nitchalek to exactly the amount of people that need to drink from it, and ein breira, yesh breira, like the exact nitzotzos in every single chelik of the water that need to be elevated by this soul will end up in his cup. And then the bottle will be taken downstairs to gift because they needed a water bottle. This is the only one they found. And there happens to be a student there, as Gavriel said, and there are nitzotzos there that go to that. Like, it's a pellet. Everything, every tissue in this box will end up in someone's hand, right? And I hope I don't get such a huge cold that every single one ends up in my hand. There will be people who come into this room. There will be people, either the tissue box will go somewhere else. Everything is with cheshbonos that are mind-blowing, mavel al arayin, to just contemplate the complexity and the compassion that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had for these sparks and for each one of us, that we should get to our tikkun on account of our regular daily foray through this world. This is what we mean when we say in Shabbos morning, according to the Medrash, la'oisei neflois gedalyah levadai ki la'olam chazdai. On a simple level, Gavriel said this in the past, but it's a good thing to reflect on. It means HaKadosh Baruch Hu acts alone. Hashem is the Echad Yachid Miyuchad. Shema Yisrael Hashem L'ken Hashem Echad. Ein Od Milvado. Only there's Hashem. He acts alone. Says the Medrash, that's not what it means. On a deeper, it could mean that, but on a deeper level, says the Elige Medrash, it means that there are wondrous things happening in all of our lives all the time that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows about. Ois and Eflois Gedalyah, that levada kila olam chazdai. Hashem's chesed is hidden. One day we're going to leave this little tiny body. We're trapped, Chava. We're mamish trapped. Life lived out of these eyes. You know, if you ever went, maybe a certain place, you had to look at something. You know, maybe sometimes you go to a scenic place, and they have like these built-in binoculars over there that can like sort of magnify things. You put them on, and it just gives you two little tiny holes. You don't see the big picture. You have to sort of, you have to move it around, and you have to be like very delicate with it, so you find exactly what you're looking for. As you move it too much to this side, and shoo, you're like miles away, and all you can see is just those tiny, I don't want to say scary things or bad things. These two eye sockets are like those holes. Meaning everything that we see, in a metaphorical sense, is looking at life through these little, tiny little holes like this. Everything. We are so exceedingly limited in terms of what we're able to grasp. Exceedingly. Beyond what we can even imagine. And one day our neshama is going to leave this body. I don't know why people don't realize this. Like one day we're going to actually die. Like actually, it's not like unigmar. That's life. And I believe belev shalim that in the moment that our neshama leaves our body, Reb Nachman says you're hit in the face with kol ha'emes. Like just we're just right here. We're stuck. We have a mission. We're stuffed into this body. And have to do what we need to do. And then one day we'll see the big picture. But there are secrets, mysteries that are unfolding. And so this is the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrates the sparks in a particular object that are going to be shayach, to be elevated by one particular person. When all of those sparks have been used up, the object will then go to someone else. There are other letters in there that need to be elevated elsewhere. That happen to be united with the sharish neshama of another individual. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will cause for that object to leave his rishos. And sometimes sometimes it'll bounce back. It'll come back to you somehow, in some way. And the reason for that is because the person had not yet activated parts of their soul that were necessary to elevate those particular letters. So Hashem will say, okay, no worries, you did what you could. Now the object will go to someone else and have it stick on there. You, in the meantime, will live life, hopefully daven more, learn more, do more mitzvahs, experience more of life, become more conscious and activated. Then you'll come back into contact with those letters that are embedded in that thing, and then they'll be able to have their aliyah. Prior, he was not capable of elevating the letters. Now, a greater degree of the portions of this person's naran, nefesh ruach neshama, are revealed. Now he's able to elevate these sparks. But in the meanwhile, it had to be by somebody else. When a person goes ahead and elevates and rectifies and fulfills all of these sparks, makes them one. These letters in that particular experience, having to do, said the Rebbe, I think he used the word hana, having to do with pleasure. Right, where a person receives life force from this experience. So those sparks are adding on to their nefesh ruach neshama shegiul elu v'nishlu me'etzlei v'al yedei ha'arazu meir b'sharish nefesh ruach neshama shalai. Now they reveal themselves within his inner structure. They illuminate his inner world. Shehu b'tzadik u'b'knesses Yisrael. His nefesh ruach neshama again was transmitted by the tzaddik into Knesses Yisrael. Shem Sharshe Kol HaNeshamas K'Niskel El, which are the root, like we said, for all of our souls. Val Yedei Ha'esnoitutus Hazois Nisyachit Tzadik U'Knesses Yisrael Hanikraim Masa Umatan. Again, how is it happening that an object that was by one person is now being transferred to someone else? In the process of Masa Umatan. I'm finished with this item. Somebody will come and buy it from me. I'll put it on Facebook Marketplace because we're moving and we need to sell our, fill in the blank, and somebody will come and buy it. It's not stam. That's not stam. It's not arbitrary. It's incredibly important. Even for something insignificant. It's a small thing. It's not a small thing. There are big nitzotzos in that small transaction. It's very, very important. Value changes. Now this object comes into the hand of somebody else. It becomes part of their story. The letters that were embedded here need to come into tziruf permutation with the other letters in that particular individual's book, chapter, paragraph, sentence, whatever, fits right in and makes a brand new tzirufim, makes brand new permutations. It makes a brand new narrative line that will incorporate this particular object. And that happens through Masa Umatan. Says the Rebbe, that relates to the way in which Masa, which we said is the tzaddik, which is the shirish nishmas Yisrael, and Knesses Yisrael, which is the manifestation of those souls and the way that they experience their lives being nispashet into this worldliness, is going to be rectified through the process of Masu Matan from the standpoint of Nitzotzis to Kedusha, because that's Mashlim, the Nefesh Ruach Neshama, and therefore goes back to the Koyma Shlema of the Masa, as a result, isn't that, of the Matan, to rectify that Koyma Shlema, which is the collectivity of all particular souls that again are rectified by coming into contact with sparks, which takes place through the transactions of Masa Umatan. That's why it's called buying and selling. Right? Learning is shakla, vitaria, maso matan. All of it is ki al yodam nesyachid tzadik uknesses Yisrael hanekroim masa umatan, because it all goes back, the give and the take, the mekach, the memkar, the buying, the selling, even in learning, the shakla vitaria. You can have ideas that have nitzotzis to kedusha. Now, sometimes an idea needs to come to a person, a certain way of thinking. It will stay by that person for some time. It gave the person what it needed to give them. Then it'll go and it'll go to somebody else, but it will remain in that person's story. I know for myself, just in my own personal journey, how many different ways of thinking I've encountered as I seek the truth, and different authors who write in different ways, and you contemplate ideas, and maybe they sit with you for like a strong while, and you're really going with it, and then you move on. But they don't go away, right? They become part of the architecture. They become part of the infrastructure of your mind. There's a word I'm looking for. Architecture. There's another word for it. The architecture of your thinking, and you needed to encounter that idea because it had nitzotzis there. You elevated the nitzotzis; they become integrated into your broader self, and then that whole topic will now become an object of fascination to someone totally different. It passes on. Ideas. That's called shakla v'tarya. There's a give and a take. That's what learning Gemara is. Where this man Amar is coming from this perspective, and he's arguing strongly for this way of seeing the sugya. The other one is arguing for a different way of seeing the sugya. There's a masa umatan. Through this, the shleimus of the tzaddik / Knesset Yisrael, in shirish neshama, and the manifestation of all the neshamas are rectified on account of the exchanges that are taking place between human beings on the level of idea, on the level of buying and selling, which are ultimately all going to enable the rectification of the Olam Haba of fragmentation by integrating literally everything, so that all of us get whatever we need, and then all of us, hopefully, if our ideas are strong, compel us into a state of unity, of achdus, first within our own family structure, and then within our community, and then within our nation, and then within humanity, and then within existence, like Rav Kook's fourfold song. And then we reveal the Achdus Yisbarach within our lives, within our own Machshava Dibur Maisa, seeing ourselves embedded in the meta structure of a unified reality. That's called Olam HaTikun. That's the job, that's the mission, that's the purpose. That's Olam Haba, Bina, the unified place, which we spoke so much about in the previous Torah, as being the Nadin and Misarin, and the place which we carry everything back to in order to rectify. That's what Olam Haba is. In the context of this Torah, literally, it's the sphere of Bina. Malchus is a world which is not quite there yet. Malchus is the lower hay. Yerushalayim Shalmata. Bina is the upper hay. It's the idealized Yerushalayim Shalmala. Our job in this world is to turn Malchus into Bina, is to make a yichud between the mother and the daughter, is to allow the first hay to be replicated and copied over into the bottom hay, so that the first triadic structure, which is Yud Hay, Keser Chachma, right, in the Yud, and then Bina, is copied over into the lower realm, so that it doesn't remain Vav Hay, right, which represents some kind of fundamental cutting off and a big channel that needs to. But like the Ariyah Kodesh says, by Yomahu, Yiyah, Hashem Echad U'Shmei Echad. Hashem's name, previously Yud K, Vav K, will be Yiyah. Yud K. That's our job. Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem. The heavens are already heavenly. Bina is already unified and complete, at least the upper part of Bina. Then, from it, emerges Olam Hazeh. She's the Eim Habanim. For what purpose? Via Aretz, Nasan Lamnei Adam. Therefore, Earth, our experience here in this world of an Olam Haba, was given to us for the purpose of recreating Bina and creating literally heaven on earth. That is our job, that's our task. In other words, when I say, and when Rabbi Nachman says, that when you wake up in the morning, we think about Olam Haba, It isn't stam a vague notion of, in this world, for Torah mitzvahs and get schar. That's not what we mean. That might be beautiful. It might not be beautiful. I don't know if that source came up in that conversation. We're not supposed to do that, but okay, it's not a horrible thing because it's within Amuna and so on. And leave that aside. But that's not the ultimate. The ultimate is Olam Haba. There is a unified potential for all of existence. I am a light worker on the part of unity. That's my life. That's my life. That's the unified root from which all of the different branches and leaves and fruits of all other parts of my day are going to extend from this singular stalk. This is the trunk of the tree, the bechinas Yud Kei Vav Kei, that sits at the core, and then all the other shame must manifest out of it. This is the essence of my life. Wake up in the morning, unity. Remember unity. Remember oneness. Remember the doctrine of the nishmas kedusha. Remember seeking achdos in thought and amongst people, and to be an integrative thinker, to be a unifying thinker, that's my task. To seek unity. Darsha yichudcha. That's my task. Says the Rebbe, once a person grounds themselves in the Olam Haba perspective, that's Shena, then again, here we go. Tzitzis, Tefillin, Torah, Tefillah, and then Masomata. Then your whole life becomes an experience of integration in relation to others, where there's a give and a take constantly. Constantly, on every level. There's Mashpia Mekabel, and bit by bit, our neshama is being completed.
Same physics. The energy is always conserved and converted. So
Never lost. Exactly right. Everything is just exchanges for the purpose of the rectification of all the nefesh, ruach, neshama of everybody. And all their gilgulim, and it's ma'avel al arayin. Like that's what Reb Nachman says, there's no teva. There's no teva. Teva is a consciousness. It's not a reality. We perceive like a normal, natural, mundane, plebeian, like regular world only because, I think in Rav Gerzi's lashon, we live in an olam teva as opposed to, you ever heard this from him? An olam pele, right? But it's a mindset. It depends like where you want to think. If we are aware that all of this is happening and we believe in it, and the way that we believe in it is by talking about it, both in Torah and in Tefillah and in Hisvaidudos. The more that you speak this language with other people, you have sichas chaverim, you have good friends, and you remind each other, then there's nothing natural about this totally supernatural, absurd experience, right? Of souls embodied with all of this wisdom here floating on a rock in the middle of space. There's nothing more supernatural than nature. There's just nothing more supernatural than nature. You're living in an olam hapela. That's what Reb Nachman is trying to remind us to do. We said there's halacha, and for that you don't need a tzaddik. For that you have Mishnah Berurah, you have Shulchan Aruch, Rambam, Yalkut Yosef, you have whatever you go to for your halacha. For halicha, you need a tzaddik. For the contextualization of why halacha exists, for why there is mitzvahs, because you can miss this point, that tzaddik is the inner point. That tzaddik's job is to come to remind us what it's all for. Halacha is what it is. That tzaddik is what it is for. That's the tzaddik. That's called halichas olam. There's halacha and there's halicha. Halacha is what to do. Halicha is where it's taking you. That's what the tzaddik is. And that's what Reb Nachman is doing very powerfully in Torah and Dalet by really recontextualizing just simple things, but it's so deep, because it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to literally live in it. When a person lives in it in the right way, integrated, which is what we're all striving to do, you're living in a different world. It's the same world as the guy sitting next to you. It is fundamentally a different world because it's a different experience of the world. You're seeing the world through different lenses. It's a different color. It's a different shade. It's just different. It's the 3D glasses, the IMAX theater. It's different than the guy who's sitting next to you seeing like the blurry, blue and red fuzz. It's popping out at you. Life is alive. Mamish alive. Okay, so we'll stop here.
Why is it like that? Why can't you get a letter, whether it's to its ticket, and then it sort of leaves this world and moves on?
It does. We're not saying that, no, because there are other letters. In other words, there are other facets of existence that are necessary for this thing. If all the nitzitzes were emerged, for example, an apple that you eat, you're not passing, I hope not, regurgitating it and passing it along. It's gone, right? Meaning, the Rebbe is speaking about ideas, experiences that need to float around in the world until all of its value is used up by the different people in whose lives that value is needed. There are different Isias. The Isias that you are elevating are gone. Isias Baruchas Ma'avir, in a good way, right? Gewalt, right? What was the other lashon in the Gemara? The sefer is nisraf, right? And the Isias Baruchas Ma'avir. In a positive sense, your sefer is your body, your lived experience is burning with the fire of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and Avodah, and Eish Litukad Ad B'Yatz HaMashiach. And that causes the Isias Baruchas Ma'avir, that the letters are floating. But there are others who have other facets of existence, need to encounter these new letters, and then bit by bit, we come into proximity with a worldview and a life experience of unity, and that's really the ikar. And never to surrender that unified impulse, no matter what obstacles, no matter what challenges, because the obstacles, challenges are from this world. Your certainty that unity is possible and can be revealed coming from the next world, coming from Olam Haba. We have to bring these two together. We should be zechus to live in this way. Ashreinu ma'atei chalkeinu. We'll carry on tomorrow with Ice Dalet.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני